Okay, we should be live. We are going to. Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh, I know. Okay, all good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for having another talk with me today.
Oh, yeah. No, I loved last time we talked. I mean, it's more of just like a bandwidth for me. Like, I would love to just have just conversations with interesting people all day long. But I taught all day today, all my classes and all kinds of other stuff. I got a pregnant wife, which is nuts, you
Oh, I
know,
can only imagine.
and two little kids at home and stuff like that. But yeah, man, I love just like chopping it up. So for
Yeah,
sure.
well, let me know if you have a hard stop time and you at any point. But
Yeah, a little bit before 5 o'clock. Greg Lukianov, who co-wrote the Coddling the American Mind with John Haidt, is doing
okay.
he's doing a clubhouse, and I was actually
Oh,
talking to Jonathan Haidt just yesterday on the phone. It was really cool talking to him, and he was telling me about this. So it's about private schools and stuff. So I do want to check that out. So we have whatever, a little over half
very
hour.
cool.
Yeah,
Well, this will kind of you know cross over with this, I think, a little bit. I wanted to talk to you a bit because I know that you are doing a lot of work trying to, I don't want to necessarily say reform, but just bring a lot of the issues in education to light. And I figured I would let you like kind of introduce yourself a bit and talk about what your projects are.
for sure. Yeah, thanks, man. So my name is Will. I'm a high school teacher. I've been teaching high school for 15 years in Los Angeles, and public schools, charter schools, private schools. And I just have seen a lot of the problems in the education system. Once you're in a system for long enough, you start to, and diverse parts of it. So you see what works, you see what doesn't. So it's fighting back against the politicization of it. I don't know if I'm even saying that word right. Bringing politics into the classroom, as well as just moving away from skills and discipline and things like that, and moving more into a lot more loosey-goosey type of ideas. I just think that we can do school better. I think school could be done better. So I'm working on curriculum with organizations like Heterodox Academy and FAIR. I work with Heterodox Academy on K through 12 education community to try and just talk about viewpoint diversity. I have a podcast, and I'm really just trying to put out the signal to people who are interested in this stuff, and then we can just kind of form a coalition.
Yeah,
Let's all just talk about this. Let's find out what the problems are, and then maybe we can try and bootstrap some sort of grassroots effort to bring about some progress and change.
very cool. Yeah, so I wanted to talk to you about like this channel specifically that I'm on now focuses a lot on like the philosophy of intelligence and like thinking. So a few years ago, I started this project trying to understand the philosophy behind artificial intelligence, actually. And one of the things that I realized when I was like mapping this process of like how to learn was that one of the requirements is that you have to reject your default status, essentially. So you have to like challenge the norms of what's around you. And I wanted to get kind of your opinion on how it seems like our schools and education almost inevitably seem to focus on making people uh, obedient and also just memorizing of information versus like critical thinking, like trying to challenge what different ideas and topics and things like that, and methods, maybe trying to come up with new methods of how to do things. Do you think that there's a way to do school where it allows for much more open challenge to, various ideas? And I mean, everything from, facts about the world that we know, or, uh, methods of how to do things, and maybe, have kids or students in general just like challenging those methods and those ideas.
Yeah, and I've been on this for a while. I had on my podcast a guy named professor named William Dereshowitz. He wrote a book called Excellent Sheep. Uh, he was a professor at Yale, and he basically saw these kids at Yale who came in and they were like, the metaphor is essentially they're great at jumping through obstacle courses. You know,
Mm.
they're excellent. They're excellent at obeying, like you said. Like, it's getting rid of, it's exchanging creativity for compliance. What makes a
Yeah.
good kid, good student? A good student is one who does what they're told.
Yeah.
They regurgitate the information and they do what they're told. They come in on time. They sit down. They know when they're supposed to sit down. They leave when they're supposed to leave, and that doesn't get us to be free thinkers. And I think that, put on my tinfoil hat, I think that's by design, because you don't want everyone thinking that they can make a difference and stuff. You need workers. You can't, too many chiefs, not enough Indians. So maybe that's an element of it. But what's happening is, what I'm seeing is, our institutions are failing now. I just was teaching my civics class today, and I went through all these major institutions: academia, media, corporations, politics, and I just showed how markets have been applied to all of it, and also like cronyism and nepotism have worked. So the people who are in the positions of power are not the best for those positions of power.
Yeah.
And what we get is not the best and brightest, who could come from who knows what kind of backgrounds and who knows what kind of schools, but we get these kids from these specific feeder private schools into these positions, and then we end up with all these institutions that are failing. So yeah, we can do school better. We should do school better, but it would take a massive, revolution in really everything from top to bottom.
Do you think coronavirus is possibly like the catalyst for that, or do you see everything as kind of just going back to normal after things quiet
I
down?
think, no, that's a good point. I think that like forcing parents to see what's going on in the classrooms, because what would happen is compulsory school. So you send your kid off to school and you're just like, they're probably not teaching them how to cook meth. They're probably doing good stuff. And then the kids come home. How was school today? Fine. You move on with your day. But when it's forced into your living room,
Yeah.
then you start to see what's going on a little bit. And some parents are like, whoa, what's going on? This is bad, blah, 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 blah. More and more parents are pulling their kids out. They're seeing that school isn't the right thing. All the arguments about should we go back in person, or, wokeness finding its way into school, all these things. So I think it's opening parents' eyes up to like, hey, maybe you should be paying attention to what your kids are actually learning. That's a positive to come out of this.
Do you think that the future of education is much more varied in the different types that we have, or do you think that it's going to be like as monotonous as it was, whatever changes are coming?
I think it should be, right?
Yeah.
Like I think for elementary school up to like 5th grade, kids need to know how to read. They know how to do basic arithmetic. They even need to know basic things like how to summarize,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But then after that, then it's really starting to button down on more specific things. The fact that we have seniors, 18-year-old kids who are really interested in like the arts, but they have to take calculus.
Yeah.
Like I don't think calculus is not valuable, but it's less valuable than other things for certain people. Like not everyone needs to know that. It's problem solving. I see the value of it. I do. But it's not for everyone. And also the neurodiversity that people have is, some people just like have a STEM brain, and some people have a super out there kind of hippy dippy brain. And it's not right to force them to be in this box that they have to learn this stuff if they want to have any chance at a future. If you want to get into Yale, you got to take these advanced studies math classes. And it's like, but I want to go to Yale so I can learn something that has nothing to do with math. So I think we should get to something that's more specific.
Yeah.
A lot of people are doing like unschooling,
Yeah.
like unschooling, homeschooling. I think that's just going to grow, so kids can start focusing on the things that they love working hard at. I teach high school. Like the gold is, if you find something that you love working hard at,
Mm-hmm.
if you can find that, you are so lucky. You hit the lottery.
Oh yeah.
And
I mean,
once we can help kids find that, that's gold. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was somebody who struggled in school in many of my like schooling years, but I was really, really good at the things that I was interested in, and they were usually like I was in the library reading all the time, but like I struggled in like especially my elementary school years, just because I liked finding ways to do math problems that were not how they were taught or things like that, and that's the kind of stuff that I I've seen that we've been teaching in this like way that's very out of context, and like that doesn't, and not in alignment with challenging ideas. And I wanted to see like what how you view that being a high school teacher. Also, you were talking about people having all kinds of different minds, and I definitely was somebody who, you know, had like a different thinking process than most of the people around me in school, and but whatever that process is. But I was wondering, do you see um, like differences in not so much early education, like, you know, teaching how to read and all those things that everybody needs to know, and not necessarily higher education, but in that in between space of, you know, high school and maybe early like undergraduate college. Do you think that there are big differences between men and women in how they approach school and learn?
Yeah, I think there is. I think there's less of an interest, like it's that cliche, you know, men are more interested in things, women are more interested in people. I think that it's a generalization, but I think
Yeah.
that tends to be true. We have like a robotics team in my school, and it's mostly men. The
Mhm.
captain 2 years ago was a young woman, though. Like again, that's why they're generalizations.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
But that I do see that, and it's. I mean, even when you look at break down like the wage gap stuff, a lot of that is choice.
Yeah.
And you know, and so at what point do we ignore that element that there is choice? I don't know. I think it's great to promote, you know, more like massive. I'm a school teacher, so that's like
Yeah.
I'm a school teacher. My wife is like a shark business like entrepreneur. So
Yeah.
like, you know, it's all over the place about what your
Of
interests are.
course.
And I think it's important to help, you know, encourage women who want to go into a more traditionally masculine field to say like, yeah, go out and kill it. And same thing for guys who want to go into a more feminine field, like, yeah, go out and kill it and bring your perspective. But I do see them branching off a little bit more. But there's a lot of pressure on young women to not be a homemaker, to
Yeah.
not go into those traditionally feminine fields, and kind of really pushing hard to go into a field that they might not naturally be interested in. And I've seen girls and talk to girls that are like, you know, they feel a lot of pressure to like do that kind of stuff. And I don't know if that's necessarily good. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I come from a family that is very similar. So, but in that people are all over the place, and you know, I definitely agree that there needs to be paths for anyone who wants to go into a specific field that they choose to go in. Do you think that like those, and of course these are generalizations, but that those differences in that there might be differences in learning processes that if we like realized, they might help people who like are, you know, maybe instead of like just focusing on interests, maybe there is something to do with like learning processes differences between men and women, or do you really not see too much of a difference in your classrooms?
Okay. I think that I have like a way to kind of like break this down. I think that we're going addressing what you're going at. Did you see a thing that United said that in the next 10 years they want to hire 50%
I
women of color pilots?
I saw something about that.
Okay. So that's quotas. Quotas, I am strongly against. And
Mhm.
here's the way I kind of explain it, if I kind of break it down. Like I say, so 98% of pre-K teachers are female.
Mhm.
98 out of 100. If you want to hire 10 new preschool teachers and you say, I want to hire 5 men and 5 women, you will get worse male teachers statistically, because you might have 6 men apply to the job and 90 women. And taking the best 5 of 90, statistically, you will get better than the best 5 out of 6. You might get 5 superstars. You might.
Mhm.
But you grow that out exponentially, you will get worse applicants. So quotas, I'm really against. And I think that what it comes down to is marketing. You have to market it better. I did a podcast with Clarissa Phelan, who was a cop in San Antonio, and she's small. She's like 5'2", 130 pounds or something like that. Like she's in the gym, but she's still like small.
Yeah.
And what she said about being a cop that was really cool and it taught me a lot is because she's small, she's hyper aware of like subtle movements. You know, she's hyper aware of body language and eyes darting back and forth, because she can't just be like, this guy wants to go, I'll smash him.
Yeah.
She has to be more hyper aware. And I think that makes her probably a better cop, a safer cop, and like a cop who's able to see trouble coming down the road compared to like if Dwayne Johnson was a cop, he's not scared of anything.
Yeah.
So I think that the way we market, if we want more female pilots, then we have to market being a pilot to different sets of people. So that could be in like black and brown communities, it could be to women, whatever it is. But we have to try and really understand, why is it that men aren't going into pre-K teaching? Not just say for men to pre-K teaching. That's just it's like baby thinking, you know?
Yeah.
Like let's actually go to, why are you not interested in pre-K thinking or pre-K teaching, and then address that. And looking for that quick, like, quota's an easy way to just like virtue signal, say, hey, we're united and we're trying to, you know, crush the patriarchy, but it's not work.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. So what do you see as some of the more like effective methods of teaching that allow people to learn on their own? Because one of my biggest questions regarding artificial intelligence was, can you teach, if learning is challenging the narrative and like having like this fight the system mentality almost, then like critical thinking, not learning, not memorization, but critical thinking, then do you think you can teach people how to be critical thinkers, or do you need to put them in an environment which allows them to learn how to be a critical thinker?
I think you can teach it. And I think I have taught it. I think that there's different processes that you can go to basically challenge, seek disconfirmation, stuff like that. So David was saying, you were asking about the learning process. Like, do men and women learn differently?
Yeah, that was more my question. If you saw that.
They do. But I don't think it's just along male and female lines. I think that there's just different personality types that learn. Okay. To say all men learn this way, that's not really the way that I've seen it work.
Okay.
But you can teach to individuals.
Yeah, that's what.
Like Naval Ravikant has talked about AI a bit, and he said something like, you know, you can only really be intelligent in a context. So he's not as worried about AI because there has to be a context to it. Like, you know, like there's something like a crocodile is perfectly suited to be a crocodile in a crocodile situation. A crocodile wouldn't be suited in the desert or whatever it might be. So I think that like to teach, you have to teach something specifically. Like for AI, this is more your field than mine. I should ask you, like, you have to program it to think in a specific context, though. I don't know if you can do just like
You can, but it's not. You can't really program it. This is what most people don't understand about artificial intelligence. Is I don't even like calling it artificial intelligence, but there's AI, what we call narrow AI, which is where you have to program it to that context, exactly like what you said. But what the AGI, the artificial general intelligence, the Skynet that everybody's kind of worried about, that Elon Musk talks about and that stuff, that's more about degrees of freedom than it is about programming. One of the things that because I was worried about the political implications at the beginning of this project, so I was trying to figure out what are the inevitabilities, because you can't program into it almost. If it's going to be generally intelligent in every situation, then you can't pre-program specific contexts. And the only thing that you can pre-program into an artificial general intelligence, and as long as it has the right degrees of freedom and constraints, which there's a few of them that are very important, then the only thing that you can pre-program is fight the system. And that's it. And and everything isn't oriented around the self. So the context is always like the self, which is kind of how we build technology in any situation. We're not just pre-programmed almost to like build beehives, like bees can build beehives, but they can't build anything else. We can build cars and houses and knives, and we can build to the problem.
Yeah.
They can't. That's kind of the difference between an artificial general intelligence and a narrow AI. The only thing that causes that is having the right degrees of freedom, which is like a self-referencing information structure and a hierarchy of information and ability to manipulate yourself and environment. But you have to that's all centered around this like fight the system mentality, and that's the only thing you can program.
Hmm.
From my work on it, I'm not saying everybody will say that, but I've done about 5 years of work on it,
Do
and
you
it's
watch
pretty intense. What
stuff?
was that?
Do you watch Lex Friedman stuff?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's,
I'd love to talk to him one day about it because I think a lot of people in the AI field get the AI question wrong for all kinds of reasons. I think probably like Eric Weinstein is probably the closest to understanding this problem in that group. But other than that, pretty much nobody else I don't think realizes that this is about just degrees of freedom, and the only pre-programmed thing is just like fight the system, and it's every system that you're placed into. What was that?
like whatever system is, like
Yeah.
disrupt the system,
What was that?
like disrupt the system.
Or like if you're told not to go open that door, you're gonna want to go open that door. It's like a little kid when you tell them not to do something and then they want to go do it. That mentality is the mentality of general intelligence, and that's why it's so hard to, I think, teach critical thinking in schools, because it relies to be a critical thinker in a specific situation relies upon challenging whatever the generally accepted consensus is.
Yes.
So,
The activities that I do in my class, and I'm a big proponent of even on like social media, is seeking disconfirmation. So it's basically the scientific. It's like, what do you think is right? Now your project for this unit is to prove yourself wrong.
bingo.
And that,
So,
so that's maybe what you mean by fighting the system.
yeah. So I years ago, when I was mapping this process, like from myself, is I kind of started this whole thing from first principles because I didn't see anybody having any definitive answers, and so what I did was I was just mapping my own process of thinking, and the steps were, if I wanted to seriously confirm something or to challenge something or to think about something, not just kind of confirm what I had already thought was true and trick myself into thinking that I was thinking, I had to reject my current default status, so whatever I thought was true, and then assume the opposite of what I originally assumed was true, and then test for evidence looking for that. So if you were, let's like, just for the sake of argument, if you believe the Earth is a sphere and you want to think about whether or not it's flat, you have to assume it's flat, then look for evidence that it is flat instead of, and vice versa, it doesn't matter. If you think it's flat, then you have, in order to truly think about it, you have to assume it's a sphere and then look for evidence that it's a sphere. And this is a fight the system mentality. It is to reject your default status.
So it makes sense then why you like talking to me, or why you're like attracted to like my stuff, because this is what I am constantly doing.
I've noticed.
I'm doing this because Africa book, she's awesome. But the reason why I'm doing this is seeking this confirmation. Is I'm not naturally that bright. Like, I don't know, like what, like IQ wise, I was not great in school, but I wanted to learn. And what I found was, if I am constantly trying to prove myself wrong or seek out, I was a little late to jump on this because there was someone that accused me of being racist and insensitive. And I said, can we please just have a conversation about it? And they were like, no, let's just talk in DMs. And I was like, I want to model this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not scared to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
I want to be proven wrong. I really do. Like, when someone says like you are bad or you hold bad ideas, like I get really excited because I don't want to hold bad ideas. And it's really frustrating, man. Like how often I am like, hey, someone says like you're terrible, and I go, I'm terrible? Please, okay, well let's can we do live, and I'll put in front of 1,000 people for you to tell me how I'm terrible, because if I get really embarrassed, I will remember that. That'll be like a core memory. Don't ever go down that road of thinking again. And then I will dispel that and I'll move forward with something better. And it's really interesting in this world of echo chambers, how many people don't take me up on that offer.
Oh yeah, I know. It's crazy how much this mentality has infected our academia. Like I'm somebody who is constantly speaking to people about physics in that world, and like I don't have a degree in physics, but it causes like some judgment, and I've noticed, and like they there is this mentality of not wanting to, because I'm like you, I want to know if I'm wrong. Like, tell me I'm wrong. Like, let's talk it out in front of everybody. And if you can prove me wrong, then great, because I just learned something new. But so many people don't actually want to. And our system is selecting for people and giving them credentials, higher credentials, if you're more likely to just echo the narrative of the mainstream, which is not thinking. It's not rejecting the current your default status and looking for new information. It's just kind of like assuming the default status and looking for information from the default status, which tricks your mind into thinking that it's thinking. And like this is something that I've noticed with when I was first starting this, is like you can not everything that we do is actually thinking. There's only one objective process of thinking, and it's almost like the scientific method applied internally. Whereas like scientific method is like, it's basically what I said. It's, you reject your default status, you assume the opposite is true, you look for evidence of it, which is like making a hypothesis. It's very much like the externalization of the thinking process. But I think there's only one thinking process. There's different like avenues that people take to think, and there's different like skills that people can learn to help them do it. And depending on your mind, like some people think better on their own or in classroom. Other people are auditory in how they learn, or visual learners and all that stuff. But yeah. I do think that if you're going to be, I think that there's only one structure of critical thinking, and it requires like challenging yourself.
Yeah, and David said, like, how do you do like what Michael Malice says, like, don't take the whole box and go off to the QAnon of like nothing is known or whatever it is. I think that you still, the scientific method is that's how we developed our thinking. So you start questioning, what you have, but then you go with the data and like.
I think we lost audio. Oh wait, there we go. I lost your audio for a second,
sorry.
But it's back.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I don't want to get like paranoid. It's just you constantly are thinking things, but like it's going to be harder and harder to prove my ideas. Like I'm on board with like drugs should be legalized and regulated, like end the war on drugs, right? So that's something that I'm like pretty sure about. Or like psychedelic plant medicine should be studied, or something like that. Okay, wokeness is bad, so something like that. And I've narrowed it down to the point where like it's pretty sharp now that I'm pretty sure, like the theory of gravity, it's pretty solid now that gravity is a thing. So you can question everything, but pretty soon you start to make sense of the world, and it starts to develop more and more and more. Then you go, well, why aren't people questioning themselves? Which brings you into the social psychology stuff and the evolutionary biology stuff of, I think it's a lot of it is the ostracized, the threat of being ostracized from your community, your tribe.
I think so.
That you are a part of this thinking group, and then you start to question that, and you go on the outside, then you get rejected. And evolutionarily, it's better to hold bad ideas and be a part of a tribe than hold good ideas and be alone.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's I've thought a lot about that, and it does seem like I remember even Eric Weinstein, I think, said like that our next big scientific thinkers will be, he said, like religious people or people of faith or something like that, because he thought that they would be the ones willing to commit to an idea against the mob even. So like if everybody's against you, they're the ones that are going to be the ones that stick with their guns because they are attributing it to this higher truth than whatever is the social accepted norm, which makes some sense, like thinking about it in the context of what you just said. Because I do think that a lot of people, especially even in academia, get a lot of their personal identity from their alignment with that group. It's like, oh, I'm a biologist, I'm a professor, or something like that. Versus a lot of religious people will say, oh, I get my identity from God, or from being part of whatever faith tradition that they are a part of. So I definitely think that and that comes with its own things, because then there's dogma on that side of things as well. So, that definitely exists. But yeah, I think that's a good point. that probably does keep people from questioning.
Yeah, and I think you can hack it a little bit. Like I used to be, probably when I was younger, I was like egotistical that like I had the right ideas. But then when I would get proven wrong, I'd get very defensive and angry and try and defend my bad ideas just so I couldn't be proven wrong. And what I've done more, like when I started going on social media and stuff, is like my ego is totally tied in being the one who wants to find the right answer, not the one who has it.
Yeah.
So I don't run away from being proven wrong. I run into the storm because again, that's where what I want to get called out on is not, when people say like you're an idiot or you have bad ideas, that doesn't bother me. What would bother me, or what does bother me, my trigger point would be like, you don't want to, actually discuss, or you don't want to change your mind or something like that. And that bothers me because I don't believe that to be true. And that's the stuff that when I do get called out on, I want to be like, okay, am I doing that? Because I think we have a tendency to fall into it. But what you said too, I just want to say like that's accurate because I don't know how. I'm not Jewish. I never went to a private school or taught at a private school or anything. I ended up at a modern Orthodox Jewish private school. Yeah. And the whole reason I'm allowed to push back like the way I am and work with Heterodox Academy and, say things that people, deem as like problematic or racist or sexist or whatever I get labeled. My school is like, keep going.
Yeah.
Like, keep going because we know what you're doing. We know that that's not who you are. And I think that that's extremely rare, but it has to be somewhere. And I think in Jewish culture, that is an element of Jewish culture, sitting around the Shabbat table, just like hammering it out, having tough conversations and stuff like that is just so valuable.
Yeah. I grew up like pretty secular in my family, but from a Jewish family. And the one thing that was constantly told to us is like Jews question everything. It's like, it's definitely part of the culture, even outside of the more religious communities. And even when you get, now that I'm part of more of those like Orthodox religious communities, like they do the same exact thing. And like the depth that they get into is like kind of mind blowing and difficult to always like get, like penetrate, but it's such the same culture. But that's interesting observation. I knew that you worked at that school, but I didn't know how you were able to do what you do. Really, like that makes a lot of sense.
Part of it, man. When you were talking about AI, like the thing that with AI that scrambles my brain. Again, I don't know this stuff. It's like, is the big problem also like the trolley scenario stuff?
The what?
The trolley scenario. Like essentially like with like autonomous driving, a kid's soccer ball goes in front. Do you hit the little kid or drive the car off the cliff?
And which one does it choose?
Yeah.
Like, I think there's so many more. I think this is an inevitability. I don't think this is I think the outcome of our interaction with the technological superintelligence, I'll call it, is an inevitability. I don't think that we have any choice in the eventual way in which this manifests. And I think it's good in the long run, but I think we're going to go through some really like nightmarish scenarios to get there. And I don't mean like Skynet, like Terminator, but I mean like we're going to be centralizing everything onto blockchains, and we're going to eventually like AI will have control over that blockchain. It's going to be much easier to censor people and censor ideas and control, like copyright and patents and things like that as we centralize, even though people think they're decentralizing, that we're not really, like as we go onto the blockchain, because it puts us all on one platform still, which is centralization. But I think those are the, like censorship, and then you get into, I know Elon Musk's Neuralink company is linking our minds to it. And like that is a whole nother can of worms that I think is something we need to consider. I'm not really worried about like it trying to wipe out humanity like Terminator. I am much more worried about like it being very much like a tyrannical censor. And eventually, if you link your mind to it, like I don't know what it's going to be able to control. But
I see it. And let me know. This is again, we'll pick your brain on this stuff. It's 1984 and Aldous Huxley. So did you see the movie or read the book Ready Player One?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There's so much fascinating things in that movie.
So isn't the future for like my grandkids or something? They're gonna sit in some sort of chair in some sort of suit that has all sensors on. You plug into some sort of VR, and you can be in a slum that can be basically on like UBI. And you just get money, and you can get basic like food, and you can go into this fantasy world and go be sitting on a beach in Bora Bora and never leave. And then it'd be a great way for those in power in the quote unquote real world to keep everyone kind of plugged in
Yep.
and do their thing, and then you can give them, over medicate them so you can get, the opioid hit anytime you want. And
Yep.
it's kind of both, because there is the 1984 version of like when they're so plugged in, then you can control them and control what they see and everything like that. It can be just, but then it's all this Huxley of just pleasure, 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 pleasure. And do you really want to know what's going on essentially outside the Matrix or the Ready Player One, whatever what was that thing called? The Oasis.
Yeah.
Okay. Or do you really want to poke your head out, or you just want to stay in on a beach in Bora Bora with a Victoria's Secret model? Like, I'll just chill here, and you willingly do that,
Yeah.
like world style. That's kind of where I see this whole thing heading. And you don't have to stay there, but do you want to leave Bora Bora with the Victoria's Secret model and go into the dingy reality that you're in a studio apartment in a dingy city, and you got to go out and hustle and work a labor job cleaning up garbage
Yeah.
from wage to go out and like live in the real world? Like, no,
Yeah.
good.
That's I see that as a big problem as well. And you won't even be needing to like put VR goggles on and sit in a chair and stuff eventually. Eventually, I think the tech will be so ingrained into us that it'll just be like they can give you like, I mean, they can turn off pain for you. They can turn on pleasure and just leave it on. Like they can probably eventually, project visualizations into your mind, because if you're going to be able to think a thought that is a visualization and transmit it out, then that also it could potentially be like use the opposite direction. So there's lots of issues, and I'm not saying any of this is definitive, but I mean, if you can send pictures from your mind, then you can receive pictures to your mind too. So like I think there is going to be lots of issues to overcome.
Yeah, and I think people will willingly do it. I think they're already kind of doing it now. I think that COVID was a test run to just see like, oh, well, people can stay at home. They can just kind of stay inside. They can just kind of, it sounds like the whole world in opioids. It kind of is. And that's another problem when you make, this is like a Jordan Peterson thing, but when you seek happiness or pleasure, artistic endeavor, like why not sit down in, a bed and be on opioids? Like, if it's pleasure you seek, then let's just get the whole world in this abundance of pleasure, and you'll see that that's not enough. I mean, material comfort is pretty high among especially affluent communities, and anxiety, depression is going through the roof. Clearly, that's man doesn't live by bread alone, and pleasure is not the avenue, which is why Jordan Peterson talks about responsibility and all that kind of stuff. Like the struggle is a big part of what gives your life meaning. And it's a weird way this whole rock was designed, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was reading some things that actually Muhammad had said, and he had predicted that in the future, like people would kill each other for no reason. And we see that today with like mass shootings and things like that. But the thing that struck me the most about reading that is that in the time that he said it, that was unheard of.
Didn't make sense. Yeah.
And like that means that like, you hear people about like Ben Shapiro, and I, nothing against Ben Shapiro. I've worked with all those people, and like I tend to agree with them on many things. But like when people say things like, well, it's the best time to be alive in human history, in some ways that's true, but in other ways that's clearly not, because people are single at higher rates than ever before. Our birth rates are lower than they've ever been, and our meaning is lower than it's ever been, and people are killing each other for no reason. And like that didn't happen in the past, apparently. And I don't think it was through lack of means. I think it was through lack of meaning, like you said.
Yeah, And I asked my students in my civics class that, like, were things better before colonization? Because people say, like, the colonizers, European colonizers came. Was it better? You look at, like, birth rates, like the fact that you would have 5 kids and maybe only 2 of them would make it to adulthood. Like, that's horribly tragic, lack of medicine and stuff like that. So I just think it's complex. I don't know if I still, tend to agree with Steven Pinker kind of avenue, or what Ben Shapiro is saying, these people are saying. I do agree with them, but I'm with you that it's not so simple.
Like, it's not so simple.
Whole new set of problems that are clearly there because of the lack of struggle. Like, it's the lack of struggle that is causing us to have all of these other crazy problems.
I think that's in large part because we are a fight the system mentality. We are that general intelligence that I was talking about. And if you aren't struggling against a system that's struggling against you, then you're just going to struggle against the system all around you. You're going to want to overthrow the patriarchy and want to overthrow, this system and that system. And I think that's something we have to address.
That clears up a lot what you were saying about the AI, how it has to struggle against. That makes a lot of sense, because from the get-go, it's the dandelion trying to push its way through the crack. There is that constant, there's tension, black and white, order, chaos, yin, yang, that whole thing. There has to be a tension in that. And when you lose that tension, when you have too much yin, not enough yang, or whatever, then it's all about balance.
Yeah.
All these religions, it's all about the balance, the white, the and dark, all the evil and good and all that kind of stuff. And so to make an AI, I guess you'd have to have some form of balance, something to push against, or inherently like code it in to have oppressive forces, right?
And that's kind of similar to education too. It's like, to bring it back, it's like you have to allow people the freedom to explore ideas, but you also have to have like a guiding hand in some way to help people find the right path. I guess I would think there is that yin and yang with education, where you have to let people think, but also you have to let people you have to guide them, which is the role of a teacher, I would assume.
I'm devil's advocate with everything.
Yeah,
that's the way I see my role. Is like, oh, you think you figured this out? Nope. And I haven't figured anything out, but I can poke holes in your ideas.
And I think that's actually a great point. That's probably something more key. If there's anything that I think teachers should learn or could benefit from learning, that's a great point that you just said. So, well, what was that?
We can talk. Let's do this again, because we could talk for just hours. It'd be fun.
I know. This was a lot of fun, and we can definitely do it again sometime. So. Thanks a lot. And where can people reach you?
So here's the best place. Just my name, Will Reusch, WILLREUSCH on Instagram. It's probably the best place.
Awesome. Well, thanks for
we'll do
having a discussion. What was that?
We'll do this again soon. I really like talking to you, man.
Yeah, definitely. Take care.